Now, in her books, Ayn Rand exposes the false and pernicious ideas destroying America and the West, a set of ideas she often labeled the axis of collectivism, altruism, mysticism, the true axis of evil, the axis of evil responsible for all the other evils in the world. And even more importantly, in her writings, she presents, explains, and defends the positive ideas that one must uphold to reach the achievements and grandeur that is possible to man, the allied ideas of individualism, egoism, reason. Now, Ayn Rand is best known as an advocate of individualism and capitalism, but that's not how she saw herself. In 1971, she wrote, quote, "I am not primarily an advocate of capitalism, but of egoism. And I'm not primarily an advocate of egoism, but of reason. If one recognizes the supremacy of reason and applies it consistently, all the rest follows." Close quote. Now, the antidote to collectivism is individualism. In the 20th century, Ayn Rand was one of the few and the greatest champions of individualism. It is the individual, not some group or collective, she argued passionately and extensively. It's the individual that thinks, breathes, values, judges, lives. It is the individual who chooses to be rational or irrational, productive or unproductive, honest or dishonest, just or unjust. It is the individual human being who lives or dies. And so it is to the individual human being that things are good or evil. In social matters, the individual must be the unit of value. The individual and the requirements of his life must be the focus. The individual, not the group, is sovereign. Now, in terms of social systems, the expression of individualism is laissez-faire capitalism. Laissez-faire capitalism, in Ayn Rand's words, is a social system based on the recognition of individual rights, including property rights in which all property is privately owned. Laissez-faire capitalism, in other words, is a system that results when individual rights are protected as an absolute. The purpose of a right is to define and sanction an individual's freedom of action in civil society. It defines the area in which the individual is sovereign. The rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness are the means, the only means of safeguarding the individual in society. The right to life is the individual's right to take those actions that his life requires. It includes the right to liberty, which is the individual's right to use his mind to think and act, and encompasses such things as freedom of thought and speech. The right to life includes the right to property, which is the individual's right to keep, use, and dispose of all the material values that he has produced. And the right to life includes the right to the pursuit of happiness, which is the individual's right to define his own goals and to try to achieve them. Rights are not entitlements to the product or effort of others, to a job at Microsoft or the services of a doctor, say. Rights require that each individual make his own way in the world. So individual rights blast away the collectivist notion that man is tied to other men. In a system that protects individual rights, each man is free to go his own way. He must simply refrain from violating the rights of others. He deals with others only by choice and by mutual consent, when each individual judges that he'll benefit from the interaction. So in a capitalist system, in other words, all relationships are voluntary, and men deal with one another not as master and slave, exploiter and exploited, but as fellow traders. The government in a truly capitalist system is restricted to one and only one vital role: the protection of individual rights. The government's responsibility is to ban the initiation of physical force, to stop criminals and foreign aggressors from violating people's rights, as well as to objectively adjudicate among individual citizens when one alleges that the other's actions violates his right. Otherwise, the government is hands-off. The government must leave the individual alone. It has no power to dictate or control the individual's thought or speech. There is complete separation of church and state. The government also has no power to emulate a criminal and violate property rights, to redistribute income, to hand out free education or health care, to to control where an individual lives, whom he can hire, and how much he has to pay them. So there is also, in other words, a complete separation of economics and state. To save yourself from the life-negating influence of altruism, you need a different, a positive, a life-affirming morality. This is what Ayn Rand has provided. She is the first thinker to defend and validate what she called the virtue of rational selfishness. Now, Ayn Rand, unlike previous thinkers and almost every layman, does not regard the existence of altruism as an inescapable fact of reality, like the law of gravity, which we must adjust ourselves to. Ayn Rand begins by asking, why does man need the subject of ethics? Why does he need a moral code? Only if you first have an answer to this question can you identify what specific moral code man needs, and whether that code is altruism or egoism. Man's need of morality, Ayn Rand argues in detail in her writings, is rooted in his nature as an individual living being. Like other animals, man faces the constant alternative of life or death. But unlike other animals, man does not act automatically to sustain his life. He doesn't automatically know that freedom is a requirement of his life and that socialism undermines it. He must discover all this knowledge by his own choice and effort. And then he must choose to put this knowledge into practice. This is the purpose of morality, to teach the individual how to live and prosper. Morality gives one fundamental guidance by specifying the values one must reach and the virtues one must practice in order to achieve life and happiness. Morality won't tell you specifically, say, that a rabbit is good to eat, nor how to hunt a rabbit. But it will tell you that to live you must be productive, not a parasite who tries to live by force or fraud off of others. And morality will explain what it means to be productive as a matter of principle across the board in every area of life. Again, morality won't tell you how specifically to invent an electric generator, but it will tell you that to live and create, you must function by your own independent mind and judgment. And it will explain what it means to be independent as a matter of principle. So the purpose of morality is not to teach you how to sacrifice your life, but how to achieve it. The proper standard in ethics, therefore, the root principle of Ayn Rand's new code of morality, is the requirements of man's life as set by his nature. To quote Ayn Rand, the standard of value of the objectivist ethics, the standard by which one judges what is good or evil, is man's life, or that which is required for man's survival qua man. Close quote. Now there's one fundamental fact that you have to grasp about man's nature in order to understand Ayn Rand's new code of morality. It's a fact that Ayn Rand was the first to fully identify and appreciate. And that fact is that reason is man's basic means of survival. Every human value necessary to sustain life is a product of thought. From growing a field of wheat, to building a fire, to catching a rabbit, to inventing a wheel, to discovering the physical laws of motion, to building a steam engine, to composing a symphony, to designing a computer chip, to running Walmart. Every human value flows from a mind devoted to the thinking necessary to reach and apply knowledge. To remain alive, Ayn Rand observes, man must first think and then produce. Man is the rational animal, she argues, and the Industrial Revolution so vividly illustrates, because he survives by reason. The principles of ethics, therefore, must acknowledge this crucial fact about man's nature. To quote Ayn Rand again, man's life, as required by his nature, is not the life of a mindless brute, of a looting thug or a mooching mystic, but the life of a thinking being, not life by means of force or fraud, but life by means of achievement, not survival at any price, since there's only one price that pays for man's survival, reason. Close quote.